Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order of the SEDA regular meeting. Call to order with roll call, please.
Board Member Van Gordon. Here. Board Member Weber.
Here.
Board Member Mo.
Here.
Vice Chair Bradley.
Here.
Board Member Blackwell.
Here.
Board Member Doyle.
Here.
Chair Pictionary. Here. And Board Member Level.
Here. Thank you very much. First item.
First item is the consent calendar.
Do we have one?
We have minutes. Yes.
Like, where is it? Okay. I move we approve the consent calendar with the minutes from February 27, 2023.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify same. Motion carries unanimously. Next item, please.
Next item is business from the audience, and it looks like we do have one hand up virtually.
Okay. If you're attending in person, please complete the request to speak card located at the city recorder's desk in Jensen main room and turn it into city quarter. If you are joining us online with a tablet, smartphone, or computer and wish to speak either of those times, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. The order of public testimony is as follows. Anyone in person in Jesse main room? Nobody? All right, and anyone who has raised their hand, their virtual hand, and I believe Assistant City Manager Neil indicated.
Yes, we do have one speaker. It's Daphne Mantis, and Daphne, you should be able to unmute your microphone.
So I'm going to go ahead and actually add one more bit is that business from the audience, please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Go ahead and speak.
Thank you. My name is Daphne Mantis, and I live on West D Street in Springfield. Tonight, unlike my usual statement of a concern or a question, I just want to thank the board for reinstating, providing written minutes of SEDA meetings and posting them online. It I think allows any kind of concerned or interested community member easy access to track the very complicated issues surrounding development in Glenwood. So thank you for implementing or reinstating written minutes. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Ms. Mantis. Appreciate your comments. Next item.
You have no other speakers, you have no public hearings, so the first item is new business. Item number 1 is development values discussion, and Ally Camp is here for the staff report.
Hi, everyone. Me again. I'm excited to talk to you about this tonight, and I hope the documents in your board packet were helpful. I'm going to take some time to set the stage, but really I'm hoping that we can keep this lively discussion. There's no direction needed from this. So I'm calling it high level and future focused. This is a forward thinking conversation that I'd like for you all to begin thinking about. I call it a go slow to go fast conversation. We're at an opportune time with Bloom Mackenzie's intention of spurring future development opportunities downtown to take a beat and think about what SEDA hopes to achieve within its downtown urban renewal district. So this conversation will be focused on downtown development values only. I bet that this conversation won't happen in one go. So today is an introduction and an opportunity for you all to share your thoughts. We'll revisit this at a later date. I see this conversation of development values connecting to some of the SEDA board's future work, any acquisition or disposition of land in the downtown area, any private development support that may be spurred from the Bloom Mackenzie project. And it might connect a little bit to your city council work with a housing density tax exemption program as programmatic development that impacts your downtown area. So in your packet, I've included selected references from the Downtown Urban Renewal Plan, very fresh at the year 2007, but it emphasizes the public-private role in development that SEDA plays. And I just want to take a second to read that main goal of the Urban Renewal Plan to you, because I think it's really important. The primary goal of this downtown urban renewal plan is to assist in the revitalization of business and elimination of blight in the downtown area. Urban renewal is ideal for the encouragement of the type of high-quality commercial, industrial, and residential and mixed-use development that is vital to the economic growth of the city of Springfield. This cannot be done without public involvement due to multiple ownerships, high land prices, and a mix of uses that are not conducive to development. The downtown urban renewal plan includes projects, activities, and actions that treat the causes of blight and deterioration in the downtown urban renewal area. So yeah, it's old, but it's still pretty applicable. The plan has multiple goals that point to development and redevelopment, and the plan outcomes can be reached through the following types of projects. That's redevelopment through new construction and various redevelopment and rehabilitation financing assistance programs. In your packet, I've also included an evaluation grid from our colleagues to the north up in Albany. This is a community very comparable in size to Springfield and in development patterns to Springfield. They have 3 groups of goals which start to identify how broad these values can be. So also I want to note in the board briefing memo, I was using a PDF. And if you were using a hard copy, the pages are different. So if you're like, really, that's not on page 13. I know, I'm sorry. I have some prompting questions if needed for discussion tonight. I'll read them to you and then you can kind of take it where you'd like. The 2 questions I thought of was, what does a successful SEDA project look like and what values does it reflect? And then development is a balance of things: regulation, opportunity, financials, risk. What are considerations in this balance for SEDA? You want to read them again?
No, here they are. You wait for a response from.
Well, they can help spur your discussion. Really, I'm hoping to hear from you all about how you all as SEDA support development projects downtown. What are you looking for? What does success look like? Knowing that we have tax increment in our urban renewal plan to support private development, encourage development that we'd like to see in our downtown core. How do you achieve that?
Steve, go ahead.
The intent of urban renewal is to form a legal area. We put taxes into that bank account, Springfield Unlimited bank account, I'll call it. And we buy up properties, put them together as a package and get a developer in to make enhance development in the city and much more worthwhile than what we have right now. And for some reason, I don't have the right words. I usually do, but that's the idea, is to make it a better city, a better area.
Corey.
Thanks for that, Steve. So mine is going to be more of like, here's my dream, probably more in the details of it. So I think that we've made a lot of great movement, and now, we have some key projects that will hopefully, one, bring new development, new developers into Springfield, which I think would be really exciting to start to see diversify in terms of the development. Projects that support are kind of digging in and improving the infrastructure. And for me, that means streets and open spaces, but it also means a reason to really spur like fiber and utilities and things that we've been able to sort of put on the back burner or the side burner because we haven't had that like urgency to like really develop the infrastructure that's going to bring perhaps businesses that need that sort of thing. So that's something that I'm also thinking about. I definitely want to see like the mixed use. I am yes to market rate housing, but also let's get some what I call workforce housing, which is not necessarily your low income or affordable housing, but if you're a young folks and buy a condo, we don't have a lot of condos that people could buy. Right. And downtown is a perfect area for condos. And I don't want to like in my dream necessarily move away from what makes Springfield great, in terms of the industries that we attract. But what are some like auxiliary businesses that would support some of that industry? And what are some ways that we can branch out without like swinging the pendulum all the way over to, I don't know, something different?
John.
I think when I think about this, I think about centering us back on the importance of infrastructure. When we get what we've seen in the last probably 20 years is where we get the infrastructure either correct, updated, put it modernized, whatever term you want to use, that has significantly spurred, private sector development, and that's been an enabling piece to it. The other piece I think is really, when you read is the flexibility that we have to take as a board. Because when you read the 07 plan, it is relatively rigid, right? Like we were on a path for a while that was to, get really tight design standards, almost make it harder to developing. Part of the wonder and beauty of it downtown is about how flexible, like it looks different, it feels different. Its distinctiveness matters quite a bit. I think there's a non-monetary goal that we need to take as a board, which is really to engage with our other governmental partners who are responsible for things like the utilities and get them to invest in the downtown area correctly, or Glenwood correctly, because, we can't, like, the strength of SEDA is not necessarily the fact that we have tax increment, right? We need all the government entities around us to sort of move and sort of breathe with us. And lastly, I think it's knowing when we're on the first foot, when we're leading the conversation and when we're following, right? We lead the conversation in infrastructure, but when it comes to private, there's places when it comes to private development that we've got to support private developers and sort of deal with whatever, problem, issue that's sort of preventing them from engaging, right? So knowing that at certain points we're going to play a bigger role, and certain points we're going to step back and be a supporter is important.
David?
All right, for the public record, I need to disclose that I may have some conflict of interest in some of this discussion. If some of the developments we discuss is adjacent to properties that I own, so I'm going to put that up before I have my comments. But as a general rule, and as a citizen and a representative of Springfield, I agree with what everyone has said thus far, especially when it comes to infrastructure. Yes. I think some of the developmental challenges, developer challenges in our downtown core has been from infrastructure. That's been some of the biggest challenges we've had. It's not been zoning or cooperation or goal or vision from the city. It's been that. I'd also like to see us at some point look at making Main Street two-way, if that's a possibility, because I think that, and if you look at some of the things that Ali's talking about, Albany, those kinds of things, the direction and the Main Street, the way it's set up is, I think, prohibitive to what we really want to do to the next level. The zoning standards that we have in place in that 2007 packet, obviously it was before we had a lot of the, how do I say this politically correct, looser drug laws than we have now. And so there's businesses that I think that we should address that where we want and don't want in the downtown core. I know of a developer down there that had a space that was for lease for over a year, and they got a number of offers from stores that were selling paraphernalia and legal drugs now, and they turned them down for the reasons that we all have mentioned, that we want our downtown to be a viable place. So I think that that should be wrapped in some sort of master vision kind of look. I also think the city needs to look at maybe helping out with a MUPT, a multi-unit property tax exemption. I think that's a good program that's been done in other areas. And then I also think that we need to address some of the concerns we've had from citizens. And I think one of the major concerns, and you all know World War II was started from parking. So parking tends to be a real issue that people have a concern with. And I think we need to address some of those concerns. I'm not saying that we should release or relinquish our parking restrictions in development, nor do we need to build a large parking garage, but I think we need to think about that going forward. I think we also need to think about some of the major properties that are going to become available probably in the next 10 years. We're talking about the project between, the Shear project on South A, which is, that whole project there, not to mention their north side of the lot will be also developed at some point, but also I believe that large property where US Bank occupies on Main Street at some point is going to become available. And I think it's not too early to try to really decide. That's a huge chunk that could play a major role in how downtown is perceived from here for the next 100 years. And I think it'd be good for us to start really kind of getting some ideas together of what we think we might think would go there, and maybe start to have some kind of conversation around that, just so we can have a plan if the opportunity arises. And then I think Councilor Rodley's idea about condos and workforce housing is a great idea. Those come developmentally with their own set of challenges and fire codes and all the things that we have to do. And so it's a little more problematic to do that in the downtown core. But if we had a conversation and found a path forward to that, I think that's a a very viable idea.
Okay, did you get that?
Sorry, I'm just taking notes.
Victoria, go ahead.
Mine's super simple because I feel like I don't, and I have visions too. I love what you said, Counselor, or is it board member Rodley, vice chair, especially when you bring up fiber, that gets me really excited because I think that's so vital. And having come from a small community of Cottage Grove, where we were able to do a lot of that stuff. I love the fact that you brought up Albany because I was at a Home Builders Association meeting and they were talking about how great it is to develop in Albany and how Albany is really the up and coming place to be. It's not that far away from us, where people can start to actually develop. So I don't know what they're doing there, but whatever it is, the builders are liking it. I would love to see some sort of an archway or an entry into Springfield that isn't just a little sign on the side, but you know, if you look at what Cottage Grove did, they actually developed this archway that goes all the way across to the beginning of Main Street and really just makes that hometown feel and like invites people in. It's that kind of community. So I don't know, something like that that would bring it all together to really highlight us.
Else? So, my two, go ahead.
I'm sorry, board member Lovell, would you mind just diving into the parking a little bit? Because you mentioned you didn't want a parking structure, but we need to work on parking. So be good to just get your perspective for the notes.
The parking as it sits now is developer friendly, whereas the developers don't have to develop underground parking or parking garage and all that kind of thing. I think there should be some attempt at either finding some property around that we could do a parking kind of situation on. We do need to have some space designated for expensive parking. I mean, the main concerns I'm hearing is there's 12 more units coming at 5th and Main, 81 units coming with the share project. There's, within a couple of years, we could have another 110, 120 units in downtown. And the concern is where those cars going to park. And what is going to happen is they're going to start bleeding into the neighboring Washburn community. And so that's going to cause us some issues. So I think there, some of the things that we're looking at, we should maybe try to look at some lots around here, some shared parking with LTD, some ride and share things, maybe expand that area a little bit. To try to see where we can park some cars. I'm not real excited about building parking garages because they're just, unless they're like, for example, that US Bank lot. I mean, I've sat there with a pad and thought, well, what do I do there? That could be a multi-use condo development. And then the building could be built where 2 floors of a 5-story building could be parking within that. I think that's really probably what we should start looking at, because underground parking in the water table we have is just not practical here.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
So lots of ideas thrown at you, probably got a big list. I was a proponent, we did a traffic analysis. Neil, you were here at that time, I think, when we paid some dude a couple hundred grand consultants to look at Main Street to see the feasibility as to what we can do with Main versus South A. I'm a huge proponent of turning Main Street into a slow South A sisters type approach because we have the facade for that. And then South A being a bypass, medium speed, where it can be the truck travel, et cetera, instead of these big old log trucks going through the middle of downtown. So South A, I think, would make a lot of sense to have kind of a bypass. But again, there's, reinventing the wheel standard is, there's a consultant out there that put out this report. All their reasoning behind it, which I didn't buy, but it's there. And, Victoria's talking about an overhead sign, which was approached by a ton of people that were willing to put a ton of money, but ODOT was the big stop on that because of the sign standards and that they have along a highway, which is a 126. So that got blown out of the water many years ago, probably 12, 15 years ago. And so and what sticks in my mind too is there's development versus redevelopment, so to speak, reusing what we have, making sure that we maintain what we have downtown, especially with the Washburn district. We got so many buildings that are every bit a part of Springfield, but I wouldn't want to see one brick destroyed. you go to downtown Eugene and you would not know what town it is based on where you're standing unless you had some historic photos to look at and look at Skinner's Butte. It's all, there's nothing. And so that's Springfield's big diamond in the diamond. It's not even in the rough is our history here has been very well preserved downtown and in the Washburn district. And I think that's something that we should all be very, very proud of and to maintain. But we have a lot of room to grow upon that. So, and Sean mentioned that, you know, our design standards was a big role several years ago, and that it was Bill Greil that was our development manager at the time, and he brought that up many, many times. He thought that was a very important thing, and I completely agree and always have agreed with that. That I think that we need to make sure that we have. I'm not sure where we're at with design standards, if they're even floating out there, but we need to make sure that that's solidified and brought back up. As far as development is concerned, you know, you have Blue McKinsey, so what design standards are being applied to that? I think there is, but I don't know. Let's see. Do we have any issues? Yes. I think that's a lot of info for you, Ally. I mean, that'll keep you busy for the next one. So,
There's even design standards for utilities too, that was.
Oh, absolutely.
Is in that as well.
Oh,
So some of
yeah.
the things that utilities may be thinking may not fit in those design
Right.
standards too.
Just to be clear, I was saying our design standards were too rigid in points. Like,
I'm with that.
but I don't want them
Loosen
so, but I don't want them loosened up to where we lose what we have to where it's
that
like.
balance matters.
So
Yep.
it becomes, because we saw some designs from, I think it was Courtney put some designs of some renditions of what these buildings can look like along Main Street. And there was like 1 or 2 story buildings that were stainless steel, and they had cables, and they had all this abstract retro look to it. And I think that would be gross. So just to put it lightly, but well, anyway, I guess I'm kind of old fashioned, but I think that's why I love Springfield, is that it represents who we are. Gosh, that's gotta be enough for you.
Yeah, if I could just take a second, I want to capture what y'all said and just put like real high level words on it.
Sure.
Councilor, I think you were talking about density and dense development. I heard yes to market rate and workforce housing or housing, just residential support. Support for auxiliary businesses, infrastructure. I heard that distinctiveness matters. Solving parking, balancing parking. Emphasizing our historic assets. So those are some like high level things that I pulled out of this. Okay.
And Corey, go ahead.
Well, and just then to just wrap sort of people into that too, because I think we really were talking about like buildings and, but I think that the joy of downtown and the sort of promise of where we're going with it is just the livability. Particularly, like you could, if we do this right, then you could age in place and still be able to go to the library and go to the store and go to all of the things and not necessarily need to move far. Or if you were, you know, the young people with a family, you would have access to all of the things close to you. So I think just thinking about the livability as well, not just on the development side, but just like, what would it be like to live downtown and what could that look like if we do this well?
Go ahead, David.
One last thing, you gave us a couple of questions and I don't think we hit them yet. Your first question, you said, well, what would be a successful SEDA project? And, you know, my high level words based on what, board member, vice chair, what are we calling, what?
Corey, yeah.
Corey said, that's a great idea.
David all
I know, well, I didn't know how formal we were here. I'm just getting like, but so I think the thing about all the things we're talking about is we want to achieve a successful SEDA project would be a safe project. When people feel safe around, that it would be accessible. There's a lot of ADA miscompliances that we have in downtown that are obviously grandfathered in, but we need to take a look at that. They need to be obviously inclusive, and I think we don't really have to struggle with that. I think Springfield is really an inclusive community, and for us to delineate and to make special amends for that, I don't know that's necessary. I think we just do that by our very nature, so I'm really proud of that. And I think also the last thing that would really make a successful SEDA project would be city inspired project. I think what way back when we first bought the Washburn building, when Mayor Sid Lyken was there. We had 3 rough and tumble bars down in Main Street and lots of drug trafficking, and Neil remembers those days. And well, he wasn't part of the bar scene. He remembers those days. Gosh, I don't want to connect you there. Yeah. But yeah, don't mention Neil by name. But Mayor Lyken came to the Washburn when we did that project, and he says, what is it that would take a successful transformation of downtown? I said, it would only cost you $3 million. Get $3 million, give $1 million to that bar, and that bar, and tell them that they are welcome somewhere else. And then private individuals, investors, people that would buy into the vision of what Springfield wants to become would come and bring their own money. So when I say that city inspired or inspiration, I think that's what we can offer as a city. We can say, look, hey, we want this here. We can offer you this. I think the SDC buyback program is a great way. And I think that's really what's driven a lot of the success at downtown.
Actually, Ali, when you mentioned that, the SDC buyback program, I'm just throwing this out here, blah. In regards to SDC buybacks and SEDA participation in that, is that something that, now I know we have partners out there because, we can hold off SDCs for the city for a long time, which still wouldn't make a job or a project meet the pro forma. So it's like all the SDCs are all the partners, and the odds of all the partners getting on board with us are fairly slim, but maybe. But could SEDA dollars be used to pay those SDC upfront SDC costs for development? And then when that development transfers or transactions where there's a sale or a use, that the monies that they become due and payable from the developer or whoever holds the permits to pay SEDA back.
Like a way super delay,
A what?
like a way super delay.
Yes,
Yeah.
but through with SEDA funding, but still holding that property in advance with that.
You're talking like
Like
a
a
low interest loan or something over
A
time?
SDC loan by SEDA to a developer on projects that we want. I mean, that's out of the box and it's,
I could look into that.
I think that would be something we'd want our city attorney's office to.
well, no, of course, no, I'm not
Yeah,
saying
I
that.
don't wanna like go,
I'm not-
yes.
I'm not- I'm
Let's
not
do
asking,
it.
I'm not asking her to say, yeah, we can do this. I'm saying, can we look into that? And I think that would be a big deal for someone that's looking to develop within the development agency boundaries and say, oh, hey, I can't develop 6 blocks from here, but I can here because I can now have those held off in advance until that transaction of the property.
McKinsey, an example of that.
So it was similar, not SDC wise, but yeah.
Well, it's
SDCs are huge.
SEDA money though.
But yeah, I agree, right, similar, but just using them for the SDC part where we know we can keep our teeth in those folks and not really invest in the business or property. Yes, David.
Right. I don't know how far down the weeds you want to go, but another successful project would be some like what Joe's saying is that there needs to be some buy-in by the county. I think in these projects, I think the county has been participation in these kind of ventures, and I think they have a responsibility to come to the table as well. And I also think that in order for things to pencil, there has to be some sort of tax consideration for the development, because typically when a project is completed or in the process of being completion, it continues to be assessed on the permits that are being taken out. So that needs to have some sort of tax incentives there. The third thing is that there has to be some way of negotiating the parks levies, because the parks levies, gosh, I want to say this really political and I know I'm going to fail miserably. The parks levies are heavy-handed in the way they're assessing the amounts of development. And I can't imagine what the project that Cher's doing over there is going to run in just parks fees and what actual impact that's going to have on the park system, when I think it's kind of overkill. So I think that has to be addressed at some point.
Absolutely. Now, do you have enough? Anybody else for comments? All right, awesome. Neil, next item, please.
Next item is the Glenwood real property transaction. That's the Cooper and Rose property, and Ally's here on that item.
Yes. So we are here to talk about the final property in the master plan area owned by Benjamin Cooper and Michael Kellen Gross. This is our only owner occupied home in the master plan area. It measures 0.15 acres and it's shown on your map with the yellow dots in your packet. It was appraised at $400,000 in January of 2023. After back and forth with the owner, the SEDA has presented an offer of $400,000 of the appraised value, plus $50,000 flat fee based off of relocation estimates that we discussed at a former meeting. That $50,000 can be used for moving expenses or other, plus an HVAC loan not to exceed $5,000. This totals $458,000 total, which also includes 3 months of living in the property without rent due. We gathered a moving estimate to better understand how much of that $50,000 would be dedicated to moving. It ends up being about $4,200, leaving $45,800 for other needs. Sale to SEDA is optional and not under the threat of condemnation. And SEDA has employed a professional broker to represent SEDA in these negotiations. They gather terms, they provide information, and they communicate with the seller on our behalf. In your packet, there's a purchase and sale agreement, which includes the terms that we've discussed today. And we are looking for direction to proceed.
Thank you. Any questions before we proceed?
All right. I move that we authorize the city manager to enter into a purchase and sale agreements for on parcel of real property in the Glenwood Riverfront area, map 17-03-34-42, tax lot 200, upon the terms described in the AIS and as substantially provided in attachment 2. Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify same. None opposed. Motion carries unanimously. Next item.
No other items.
Perfect. Adjourned. Good job.